Just over 60 days until a brand new NFL season kicks off. The LA Rams will begin their title defense in the same place they hoisted the Lombardi Trophy, at home in SoFi Stadium against the team favored to win Super Bowl 57, the Buffalo Bills. The retired/unretired Tom Brady and the Bucs favored to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Welcome to the three members that make up the Pick Six podcast. Will Brinson and his super friend John Breech here to break down the top 5 most improved teams in the NFL. John is going to take us through his top 5, and then Will is going to react, essentially playing the role of Monday morning quarterback, even though it's Thursday. John, let's go here. Who was the team that just made your top 5?
Well, let's start in the 5th spot, and it is the city we were just talking about, Los Angeles, but it's not the Rams, it's the Chargers. Look, if you look at that team, they came literally one game short of making the playoffs last season. If they had beaten the Raiders in Week 18, they'd be there. Well, one reason they didn't beat the Raiders is because their defense was a disaster. Derek Carr was moving up and down the field. The Raiders put up a lot of points. Brandon Staley, their head coach, is a defensive guy. So what did they do? They went out and they upgraded their defense. I mean, you look, and they upgraded it at every level. Start in the secondary. What'd they do? They went out and got one of the best cover corners who was available in free agency. That was J.C. Jackson. What else did they do? They called up the Bears and said, hey, is Khalil Mack available? The Bears said okay because they're having a fire sale. And now they added one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. They also had kind of an underrated signing in Sebastian Joseph Day on the defensive line. They added Kyle Van Noy. I mean, they totally beefed up that defense, which felt like the one part that was holding them back from making the playoffs. It feels like they have one of the better defenses in the NFL now, and that is why they are number 5 on my teams that improved the most this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a problem with the Chargers on here. I think the biggest issue is they're the Chargers. Like, they'll find a way to screw it up. They do it every year. And I think one of the bigger issues too, like as good as Khalil Mack is he definitely going to like just lock up that rush defense? Because that was the biggest problem for the Chargers last year. As much as they could score, they couldn't stop the run. And I still do wonder how they'll be against the run. You saw it cost them against the Raiders there in that overtime game that cost them a playoff spot. So some concerns about the Chargers. I think they improved, but I don't think they're, past being the Chargers yet.
Will Brinson coming to us from a penthouse atop an unconfirmed city in America somewhere.
Yes, a very busy city.
Yeah. It's cloudy and overcast.
So the Chargers fortify the D. They get Zion Johnson in the draft to help that offensive line. Let's move towards number 1 on our list with number 4, talking about teams that improved themselves the most this offseason. 4th on that top 5 list is which team, John?
Hey, let's stick in the AFC West. The Chargers are at 5. Now we have the Raiders at 4, which makes sense because I think Brinson's actually in a Las Vegas penthouse that he won while gambling on the Strip last night. Look, the Raiders, if you had just told me they only added Devontae Adams, that would almost, for me, be enough to put them on the list of most improved teams. But that's not all they did. I think that the Devontae Adams trade was so big that you kind of forget about the other moves. And we're talking about, hey, this is a team that added Chandler Jones on defense. Chandler Jones was good in Arizona. He seems like he has another season or 2 left in the tank, and he could be a huge difference maker for that defense. I also like, hey, on the sideline, they have a new coach in Josh McDaniels. He seems to have good chemistry with Derek Carr so far, and you want your head coach and quarterback to get along. It always felt like there was a little bit of friction between Carr and John Gruden. And you know what Josh McDaniels did? He brought in a couple of his buddies, some guys he knew from New England. Brandon Bolden, a running back who McDaniels loved utilizing in the Patriots offensive backfield. I think we'll see him do a lot of the same things in Vegas. And then also Deron Harmon, a defensive player that was in New England while Josh McDaniels was there. So I really like what McDaniels and the Raiders are doing so far, and that is why Vegas is number 4 on my most improved list.
My only real issue here with the Raiders is that John was like, let's not let Brandon Bolden overshadow Devontae Adams. Yeah, no kidding, John. Nobody's doing that. It's a good choice. They upgraded at coach. They upgraded at wide receiver. They upgraded at pass rusher. I mean, they went all in on this AFC West arms race. I have no beef with it.
There you go. No beef between the Super Friends.
We want you to collide. We need you guys to collide a little bit more here.
I was just arguing about the Raiders. The Raiders improving. Like, the Raiders clearly improved.
No, this is a good list. This is a good list by John, and Will's doing what a Super Friend would do.
Monday morning quarterback,
he's going to compliment.
things.
Well, he's going to start to tear into John soon enough. It's just a matter of time. Let's continue the countdown. John, who's the team that comes in at number 3?
Well, I love the moral support here from Brinson. My self-esteem is really high right now. You know who else self-esteem is probably high right now? Is Tua Tagovailoa down in Miami. The Dolphins are number 3, and it really feels like they spent this entire offseason doing everything they can to set Tua up for success in 2022. I mean, you look at what they did. First of all, they brought in head coach Mike McDaniel, who, if anyone can make Tua thrive, it is him. They can focus on the run game. Don't put all the pressure on Tua. But guess what? If they do need to throw the ball, that's fine, because they traded for Tyreek Hill in one of the biggest moves of the offseason. We look at the running backs on that list that they added. Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert. I mean, those are 3 running backs who are probably all going to get probably equal to close playing time in this McDaniel offense. And you know what? They also brought in some protection for Tua. 2 of the most underrated signings came on the Dolphins' offensive line, with Teron Armstead going there playing left tackle. And let's not forget, they also stole Connor Williams from the Cowboys to slot in and start at the guard spot. So they beefed up the offensive line. They added receivers. They added running backs. This Tua should have a huge season. If he doesn't, maybe it's time to move on. But Dolphins, number 3 on my most improved team list.
Again, I don't know what I'm supposed to say here outside of, like, yes, the Dolphins clearly improved by adding Tyreek Hill. They added the best offensive lineman in free agency, and they went out and got one of the best wide receivers in the last 5 years via a massive trade to help out their young quarterback, and they got an offensive mastermind in Mike McDaniel. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to argue here with John. It's a good choice.
You don't always have to argue, but we could argue this. Tyreek Hill said that Tua Tagovailoa was more of an accurate passer than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
That's just stupid.
Correct. Exactly. That's just not accurate.
I'm not going to argue that, though.
It'd be like having the Colts as your number one most improved team.
We could argue, but we won't, because we all know it's not true.
Yeah. Well, so again, this could be free agency, the draft, trades. Which teams improved themselves the most this offseason? We're in at number 2. Which organization falls into that slot, John?
Yeah, it feels like my whole list is AFC West teams, because it almost is. Number 2 is the 3rd AFC West team I've listed so far. That is the Denver Broncos. If Brinson wants to hate on one, it might be this one. I'm literally only putting the Broncos here because they made such a huge upgrade at quarterback, obviously, with the Russell Wilson trade. I mean, this is a team that went 7-10 last year with a disastrous quarterback situation. Drew Lock, it didn't matter who was starting at quarterback. I feel like Russell Wilson is worth at least 3 wins, and it feels like this team could win 10 games, maybe 11 games with Russell Wilson under center now. And then, they beefed up the defense a little bit. They went to Dallas, and they stole Randy Gregory flat out from under Jerry Jones's nose. We all remember that drama. So just with those 2 additions, they made a couple more moves. Obviously, they have a new head coach in Nathaniel Hackett, re-signed Melvin Gordon. But the Russell Wilson trade and the Randy Gregory signing are the 2 big reasons why I have them at number 2 on this list.
I mean, like, the Broncos, the Broncos were the team that everybody's like, well, all they got to do is get a quarterback, and they're there. Like, that's the one piece they need. And the credit of the Broncos credit, like, they were supposed to be involved in the Aaron Rodgers pursuit. They bring in Nathaniel Hackett. You think that's the reason to put Rodgers over the edge to get traded there, and then he decides he's not going to get traded. Green Bay doesn't want to trade him, so they pivoted. I mean, let's give George Patton a lot of credit for pivoting and chasing after Russell Wilson, who we didn't think the Seahawks were going to trade, and this gives them a shot to go win a Super Bowl. I mean, look, the last 2 Super Bowls have been won by quarterbacks who were traded or signed with teams in their first year. Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. Maybe Russell Wilson will make it the big trifecta.
Yeah, Russell Wilson and the Broncos playing the Seattle Seahawks in Week 1 in Seattle.
Wilson, by the way, coming off his worst statistic season in his career.
Yeah, really. He didn't have a whole lot of protection on the line there.
Right.
So he was trying to get that beefed up. We're going to continue our beef, even though there's really no beef here between Will and John.
Maybe less.
The Chargers, Raiders, Dolphins, and Broncos among your top 5 improved teams this offseason, John. So who's the team coming in at number 1 on your list?
Well, Brinson might not like this one, depending how big of a fan he is of Matt Ryan, because the Indianapolis Colts are the #1 team on my list of teams that improved the most this offseason. Look, if you improve at the quarterback position, that means you already improved more than most other NFL teams. And the Indianapolis Colts had a dramatic upgrade at quarterback. I think Matt Ryan is that much better than Carson Wentz. If this team went 9-8 with Wentz, the sky is the limit with Matt Ryan. Who knows? He might even get back to the Super Bowl for the first time since he was with the Falcons in that one where they blew that huge lead. But you know what? It wasn't just the Matt Ryan trade. This team made a lot of solid moves that made the entire roster better. There was the trade for Yannick Ngakoue. You add him with DeForest Buckner on the defensive line. That is a very formidable defensive line. One signing that I felt flew more under the radar than probably should have was adding Stephon Gilmore. He's still one of the top corners in the NFL. So you're talking about Stephon Gilmore in the secondary and Ngakoue and Buckner on the defensive line. Darius Leonard, as long as he's healthy, is one of the top linebackers in the NFL. And so when you look at all those additions, it feels like the Colts should be a good team and possibly a Super Bowl contender this year.
Okay, fine. This is stupid. Why are the Colts #1? What are you doing? This is idiotic. Like the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson. And I love Matt Ryan. I'm really high on Matt Ryan. But like the Colts just stumbled into Matt Ryan because the Falcons were dumb enough to think they should be involved in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Now, don't get me wrong. It's very lucky that they get out from under this disastrous Carson Wentz move that Frank Reich foisted upon them last offseason and saving some jobs there in Indianapolis. But this is ridiculous. How can they be above the other teams on this list? This should be the 4th team on the list, maybe, and you bump everybody else up one. So, John, that actually invalidates your entire list, makes it terrible, and makes me realize I never should have agreed to do in the first place on anything, because if you have the Colts at 1, you just don't know what you're doing.
I cannot wait to tag Rate My Background on Twitter and ask them what they think of your penthouse apartment.
My background has been rated. My background has been rated by Twitter before. By the Twitter thing before. It'll be back off soon. It's just not ready yet.
Will Brinson sending John Breech from the penthouse to the doghouse here with this list. He doesn't like the Colts at #1, but I'll tell you what, they certainly have improved with Matt Ryan and Stephon Gilmore. That's a nice addition for them on the defense. Much more ahead here as we continue on CBS Sports HQ as you take a look at John's top 5 teams, the most improved teams this offseason. Coming in at #1, the Colts at plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl. The Colts last won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning in 2006. We shall see again just over 60 days to a brand new NFL season.
All right, these fan bases are not going to like seeing this. These are the odds for the worst regular season records in the NFL for this coming campaign, headlined by the Texans at a plus 250. You see the Falcons on that list as they have moved past Matt Ryan, as well as the New York Jets. The Panthers just adding, though, a new quarterback in the form of Baker Mayfield. We are back on HQ Gym Basketball alongside Akeem Dermish, and we just talked about which teams improved the most for the National Football League this offseason. How about the flip side of that coin? Which teams got worse? Again, CBS NFL analyst Will Brinson and John Breech with us to go to the top 5 with those teams' worst off seasons. John, which is your 5th team on that list?
Well, I am going to start in New England. I hate questioning anything Bill Belichick does because it's definitely going to come back and bite me. But I definitely don't think this team got better this offseason. I mean, you look at the fact that they lost their 2 starting guards. Ted Karras left in free agency. They traded away Shaq Mason. They had to draft a guard, so now they're going to be starting a rookie to protect Mac Jones. You have a second-year quarterback. Why are you letting your 2 guards go? They let one of the best corners walk in free agency. J.C. Jackson is gone. Kyle Van Noy joining J.C. Jackson out in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And so this just feels like a roster that definitely isn't as good as it was when the offseason started.
So I don't want to argue necessarily against the Patriots. I will point out that you called Bill Belichick, Bell Belichick, and that's like just so weird. But more importantly, I think the two teams that I would want to have in here above the Patriots would be one, the New Orleans Saints, who, whatever you think about the personnel that they've got, and they lose Teron Armstead, obviously they lose Marcus Williams. I mean, those are two of the key players, two starters, right? I mean, two very important players, and then more importantly, they lose Sean Payton. Like, I get that everybody's like, oh, the Saints will be fine. Dennis Allen will step right in. Pete Carmichael's got this. They got Jameis Winston. Like, that team could stink. I mean, they have a good starting roster, but they just lost one of the best NFL head coaches over the last 10, 20, 15, 20 years. Like, that's a big concern for me. I don't think it's being talked about enough. And then the other team that I think could have snuck on this list is the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, I mean, this was not a shot. It really wasn't. But, like, I mean, if Deshaun Watson just in a vacuum, if they go from Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson, and you improve like on the field, but if he ends up if he only plays 4 games, like 0 games, I mean, suddenly they just traded Baker and they're getting 17 starts from Jacoby Brissett. I mean, that's clearly a team that's taken a step back in a little window where we did feel like the Browns would have a chance to make a playoff run or two, and certainly can be a contender. I mean, I just think that's with the unknown that is out there with Deshaun Watson, like, I'll take the Patriots over the Browns if I'm picking a team to make the playoffs as of today, given the facts that I know.
Don't knock Jacoby Brissett. He's not a game manager. He's a game changer.
He's an NC State guy. I love him.
Hand the ball off to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Yes.
Run the football. Let's dump it in the backfield if you panic. Yes. Get it to David Njoku.
Brissett likes those swing passes.
Yeah, he does. That's what I'm saying. He's not a game manager. He's a game changer, perhaps. We'll see. John, I was hoping you'd take a shot at the Steelers in this segment because Big Ben retired and Juju Smith-Schuster left in free agency, but you're not. So who's next on your list?
Yeah, Hakeem, the irony there is that the Steelers were on the just miss section of my most improved list. How do you like that twist?
You're a Bengals fan of all. I mean, come on.
I don't know.
It's a shot at Ben Roethlisberger. I think retired and the Steelers got better.
That's true.
I think Mitchell Trubisky is better than 2021 Ben Roethlisberger. I think almost any functioning NFL quarterback is. But number 4 on this list of teams that got worse this offseason is the Dallas Cowboys. It's America's team. Look, they won the NFC East last season. We all saw that. They might win the division again this year because the NFC East isn't a great division, but I do not feel like they are as talented as they were last season. I mean, you look at this team. They lost 2 receivers in Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson. We saw the Broncos steal Randy Gregory away. And you know what? 2 key losses on the offensive line. You lose a starting offensive tackle in Lael Collins, who went to the Bengals, who are much, much better. And then you lose Connor Williams to the Miami Dolphins. It is not – we've always talked the past few years about how good the Cowboys' offensive line is. It's not easy to lose 2 starters and just have your offense automatically recover from that. So the Cowboys are a team that I do think got worse this offseason.
Yeah, I'll go a different spin to this. Not I necessarily disagree with your take, Breech, about the Cowboys getting worse. I think my take would be that the Eagles maybe should have been a team that ended up on the teams that got better list. They get my boy Jordan Davis in the draft. They trade for A.J. Brown. They look like a really complete roster, and I feel like I haven't looked at the odds in the last week or so. But, I mean, the Eagles have been like 2-1 to win the division, and to me, they just look like a better roster than the Cowboys, and I would rather bet on them to win the NFC East than I would on Dallas. So I think that would be sort of my, okay, I'm not going to disagree with Breech spin here and say that the Eagles, maybe a team that got better, and that's what really pushes the Cowboys down.
Yeah,
that's how you know we're super friends, Brinson. The Eagles were the other team on my just missed most improved list with the Steelers. We're on the same page.
Yeah, so as far as odds are concerned, Dallas a +115, Philadelphia plus 185. So we have some well-known teams, one in the AFC and the Pats, one in the NFC and the Cowboys that make the list. In at number 3 under the category of top 5 teams that got worse this offseason is which team, John?
Yeah, this third team is the Chicago Bears, and I'm not so sure the Chicago Bears understand the point of the offseason that you're supposed to improve your team because it feels like they did the opposite of that. I know we have a lot of Bears fans around, with the ears listening, and I'm sorry to tell all of them that it just does not feel like this team got better. I mean, Allen Robinson's gone. Khalil Mack is gone. James Daniels is gone. You lose an offensive lineman. Akeem Hicks is gone. All these starters have left town. I'm not sure who you're replacing them with. Justin Fields still doesn't really have anyone to throw the ball to. The offense feels like it's going to be a disaster, and this could be an ugly year for him. The Bears feel like a team. They weren't good last season, and they somehow got worse. That's not ideal.
The Bears probably have a bottom 3 roster in the NFL right now. I think the Falcons, who may make an appearance in just a second, are certainly would be my pick for the worst roster in the NFL. But the Bears are not that far off. My biggest question is, does the new regime in Ryan Poles, which by the way, you fire a Ryan and a Matt, and then you hire another Ryan and Matt for the same job. Like, you're really not doing anybody any favors. Like, it's not a favor for you, not a favor for them. Especially, it's like you went from Ryan Pace to Ryan Poles. Like, you just sound like people picking names out of a hat full of Ryans. I mean, it's out of control. So, at any rate, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, their actions and their moves this offseason, and I struggle to sort of connect whether this is true or not, but their actions and their moves are not indicative of two guys who believe in Justin Fields as a quarterback. Like, if you believe in Justin Fields and you want to build around him, you go out and give him some help. I mean, like, they got him Equinamia St. Brown. You know what I mean? Like, it's him, Darnell Mooney, and Cole Kmet. Like, there's just not a lot of help for a young quarterback. You wonder, are they trying to clean up the salary cap and get into rebuild mode? But if they're there, would they consider taking another quarterback in the first round already, like 2 years later? They didn't have a first-round pick. It just didn't feel like they did anything to help the young quarterback. And that's always a big red flag to me, especially with a new regime coming in, and you wonder how they feel about said quarterback.
All right, we're down to your top 2 teams that got worse this offseason. John, who's your runner-up?
The runner-up is the Atlanta Falcons that Brinson just hinted at. Look, they traded away their starting quarterback. They let their leading sack leader, Dante Fowler, from last season go. Their top tight end, Hayden Hurst, also not on the roster. And so when you lose good players and replace them with players who aren't as good, you got worse. And that is what the Falcons did here. They made some interesting signings with Casey Hayward. They re-signed Cordero Patterson. But Marcus Mariota is a downgrade from Matt Ryan no matter how you spin it. The defense probably isn't going to be great. And anytime you downgrade at quarterback, your team is going to likely be worse. And that is why the Falcons are the runners-up in this spot.
Yeah. Thank you, Breech. Yeah. The Falcons, like I said, the Falcons are probably the worst roster in football. I mean, you go through it and you start to look, and there's maybe 4 players, 5 if you want to count like Younghoe Koo, their kicker. I mean, A.J. Terrell and Kyle Pitts, maybe Drake London, right, are players that you would definitely want to add if you were, if you're an expansion franchise, you came along, you could just pick any players you wanted. But and Grady Jarrett is very good, but he's older, of course. Really, this is a team that they rebooted with the coaching staff in the front office finally, and they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and be competitive while also rebuilding. And that's mainly because I think Arthur Blank wanted to keep Matt Ryan with the Falcons for the duration of his career. They got a chance to go after Deshaun Watson, being that he was, a local guy theoretically interested in playing for Atlanta. They struck out, and it gave Matt Ryan the opportunity to say, hey, look, you told me I could get a trade if I wanted. I'm going to take you up on that now. And he bolts her Indy, and you look at this roster, and it would be kind of a miracle if the Falcons won 5 games, I think, at this point. So, sure, you lose Matt Ryan on a team that already wasn't very good, and it ends up in a situation where you were one of the worst rosters in football.
I feel like Casey Kasem now.
Ooh, yeah.
We are down to number 1 on our list
your deep,
of
buttery voice, though.
Of teams that had
Casey Kasem
the
once
worst
spoke at my
offseasons.
elementary school.
He did?
True story.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet him?
I'm pretty sure, but I was really young. I'm not exactly positive. I think it was like shaking hands, like, "Hey, Mr. Kasem, how are you doing?"
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Like a little connection there. How about that? How about we have a little drum roll here? And number 1 on the list is, John.
Well, first of all, good thing we're not doing a Casey Kasem top 40 because we'd be here another hour. We're only doing 5 and we're down to 1. That number 1 team that got worse this offseason is the Seattle Seahawks. Look, you know what? If a tennis account is making fun of your team on Twitter, that basically means you have reached rock bottom in the NFL, and that is where the Seahawks are right now. We obviously know they have a huge downgrade at quarterback by trading away Russell Wilson, and that move alone really puts them in the spot of having the worst offseason. You don't have Russell Wilson. You're either going to roll with Drew Lock or Geno Smith, both of which make you worse at quarterback. And the fact that they traded away Russell Wilson kind of overshadows the fact they also let the best defensive player walk in free agency. Bobby Wagner, no longer in Seattle, and even worse for the Seahawks, he went to a division rival and now plays for the Rams. So this has been an absolute disaster of an offseason for everyone in Seattle except for Pete Carroll, because I think he is probably thrilled that he's going to be able to run the ball 90 times a game, punt on 4th and 1, and maybe try and win games 7-3. I don't know what their plan is, but the plan hasn't been great this offseason.
Look who snuck in here! Robbie Brinson making a little cameo there to talk about the Seahawks. Yeah, I mean, look, this. Sorry, he's poking his head around the corner. I thought he could come back.
It looked like you kidnapped him. Actually, you kidnapped him. It looked like
he was trying to run away. He realized it wasn't a podcast, and he's like, "Oh no, I got to get out of here." This is serious stuff. Yeah, the Seahawks are the easy number 1 pick here. I mean, you're Pete Carroll. You're thinking, you're going to keep this run with Russell Wilson going. And anytime you have to trade away a Hall of Fame quarterback that you drafted in the 3rd round and you went to multiple Super Bowls with, you are having a bad offseason. And they're putting a smiley, happy face on it and acting like everything's fine. But the reality is the Seahawks are going into the season with Geno Smith and Drew Lock. I think it's the worst quarterback situation in the league now that Baker Mayfield's in Carolina. I mean, look, Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Like, you go from Russell friggin' Wilson to Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Maybe they're right. Maybe they traded Russ ahead of time before, season last year not very good. Maybe they're getting out of this at the right time. But, man, when you have to do that in a division with the defending Super Bowl champions, an Arizona team that is a playoff caliber squad, and then, of course, the 49ers, who were pretty close to going to the Super Bowl themselves, you put yourself in a really bad spot. It would be a shocking development if the Seahawks were 500 or better, and certainly if they made the playoffs.
Will and John clearly not fans of the birds, right?
Right.
Seahawks and Falcons 1-2 on the worst off-season list. Our thanks to Will Brinson and John Breech. And if you like what they had to say, we have more for you. Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis? Look no further. CBS Sports senior writer Will Brinson and John Breech get you up to speed each and every day, about 30 minutes, with what's trending in the NFL world. You're always in the know if you listen to them. It's the Pick 6 Podcast. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.